if you post it,
Yeah.
we can always go back.
Okay, so I'm going to record. Ag Anna, jy gaan al die kak weet. Dit is mos nou die ding. You're going to know.
Nee, ek weet nie altyd alles nie, né?
So you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to basically talk through sort of the process I follow, the way I think about it. And I'm going to take a fly sort of step for step for step for step through every little thing. And I'm just going to talk about little nuances and small little things. And if anyone has a question or anything, or you want to make a comment, and you know, I don't think we all need to mute ourselves, but just you know, just say it on the spot. And I think that's sort of a good way to get it going. You know, the thing with classics, and Arno can tell you this as well, is there are no shortcuts. You know, you can't start tying classics and think within a week you're going to be banging them out, because you're not. It's a process, and there are lots of things you learn along the way. Also, your eyes sort of get trained to see certain things. You know, in the beginning you tie a fly and the balance is totally off, but you can't see it. And then like a year or two down the line, you go, wow, that's horrible, you know. So yeah, so I think it's important, if there's certain smaller things you do when you start out, they'll definitely help you. Okay. And the first thing is materials. Materials are like everything. I mean, jy kan nie koek bak met kak nie. You can't bake a cake with shit. You can't do it. Okay. And a lot of people don't have the right materials, and they try and tie the fly. And that's a very futile thing to be doing. That's like rocking up to Tarleton with your girlfriend's Beetle and thinking you're going to win the race, because you're not. It just doesn't have the horsepower to pull you over where it needs to pull you. Okay. So you do need the best quality material possible. And that's important. Sourcing the material. I mean, it took me a very long time and I mean, I don't have a massive collection, but it took me a very long time to get the type of stuff I have, you know. So that was quite important. And I'm going to share my screen now, and I'm going to go to this over here. Okay, so when I tie a fly, okay, what I typically do is I decide on a pattern I want to tie. I'll page through many books and don't just page through modern books, page through old books, you know, Hales, Kelson's, there's the Francis and Francis, the Blacker, there's quite a couple of them. You can very often download them online, very often free of charge. You know, if you put Hales, how to tie salmon flies, you can get a downloadable copy of that thing. Rian, don't you want to put your sound off, man?
Yeah, I think it's starting to hail now, so I'll put it off quickly.
Yeah, just mute it there. If you've got a question, just unmute. Okay, so what I'll typically do is I'll decide on a fly I want to tie, and then I'll start looking for a hook for that fly, and use hooks that you know you have materials for. I mean, if you only have wing length, if your goose can only tie like a 2-0, don't try tie on 4-0s, because it's just going to disappoint you. You're always going to be short. Okay. The other thing I did when I started tying is I would just start tying a fly, and very often later on in the process, after you spent many hours, you realize, I left too much space for a head, or I put the butt of the fly or tie the tail in at the wrong spot, or, you know, things like that. But then you've already spent many hours on the fly. And the thing is this, when you do that, it's not going to work. It'll never work. If you've positioned the tail wrong, if you've put it in the wrong place, your fly will never work. It'll have a knock-on effect. Okay. The tail sets you up for the whole fly. So tie the tail too high, tie the tail too long, tie the tail too short. Basically, the fly just sees its ass. So what I typically like to do is I like to take the hook, like you can see here, and then I like to draw. I put it on a piece of paper and I draw the fly out for myself. And what that does is that just orientates me. Okay, and I'm just going to show you a couple of things I sort of look for. I like a tail that extends out of the hook shank. I don't like tails with a super sharp angle because for me that kills flow. And when I'm talking about flow, it's exactly that. If I have to pull this thing through water, it needs to flow. It needs to look like it wants to swim, you know? So even though I might not swim these things, I tie them to swim them, okay? So I'll typically draw it out. I let the hook gape, so the distance from the point to the shank, I let that help me a lot in terms of proportion. If you look at the distance of the wing, that would be approximately, in this case, as long as the gape of the hook, okay? But the other thing is, so now you've got this heavy wing on top of the shank. The other thing to consider is that you need something on the bottom to balance it out visually. So typically, if you look at the throat over here, the lines of the throat and the wing sort of complement each other. They complement each other, and I've got stuff happening on the bottom to balance that wing out. If I was to swim this fly, that would also be very important. The bottom of the fly would need to balance the fly out. If this was too short, this thing wouldn't swim properly. This thing would like twist around or topple over. So that's quite important. Don't worry. I tend to err on the longer side when it comes to throats, but this is something, yeah. So I tend to err on the longer side. If you look at this fly, look at the wing over there. Okay, now follow this with me. Imagine an imaginary line going right through to the tip of the throat. Look at how that hackle over there is tapered and sort of follows that line. Follow the line, follow the line, follow the line, follow the line. If you do that, you get quite a nice balance to the fly. So this is, I never actually ended up tying this fly, but this was a silver gray I was planning to tie for a guy named Scotty DeBrain. I still owe him a fly, so I'm going to have to still do it. So I would typically then draw everything like this, and then you could use this template to actually measure materials against. Like the next part of the process for me would then be to look through my materials and find things. And the first thing I'll look for is a tail, okay? And then I'll look for a crest. I'll look for a crest, and then I'll find a hackle, and I'll build a wing, and selecting the right materials will take me longer selecting materials than it will to tie the actual fly, okay? So I take a lot of time looking for the right stuff, and I really take my time. I don't rush that process. I don't just put on any old tail. Sometimes it'll take me an hour to find the right tail. I look through like a couple of necks and I'll go, I'm just not finding the feather that sort of excites me, you know? So that's quite important to me, is to do that. So here's another fly I tied, a Nicholson. This is quite a ball bag to tie, a pain in the ball bag. It's like, you can ask Arno, he's tied this thing. How many times did you put yourself through this, Arno?
3.
Oh my word, that's
3
like,
times.
okay, twice more than I was prepared to do it.
Well, where is mine?
But it's like a pain in the ass to tie this thing. Look at, it's got 1, 2, 3, 4 body sections, and it's like, you know, this thing's like a feather circus. It's got like, they just didn't put the kitchen sink in this thing. That's the only thing that's not in there. But there's so much shit going on in this fly. So if you don't draw something like this, there's his, you check. If you don't draw it out, you can end up in trouble. I mean, say now you make that section too long, then the fly will always be off balance. It'll never be balanced. So planning it out is important. And what I also did when I tied this particular fly is I would hold up this template up against the hook while I was tying the fly to measure things out. So that was quite important to me. And this is basically what it ended up being. It's not quite like my drawing. I mean, I think like there are one or two things that I would have liked to do better. I would have liked a stronger heron throat in there. I didn't have nice orange hackle. It was kind of a bit shitty. I would have liked to maybe prop this wing up slightly, have the topping hug more, like in my drawing, you know, like that sort of vibe. That would have looked nicer. But I tied it, and it's not bad. It's okay. There's a lot of stuff that goes into this thing. I mean, J hackles. Oh my word, J hackles. Oh, you got a double tone sort of silk on each little segment there. There's a lot. There's just so much happening in it. Okay. So let's start at the beginning. So what I like to do is, especially when I'm tying flies that use silk or tinsel bodies, I like to fully gut flies. So if you look at this, the gut over there, I gut it fully, I cut it at a taper, and I tie it on all the way. Can you see already there's some form of a shape being formed over here? Okay. And the important thing is to work with your thread flat. Thread control is like vital when you tie salmon flies. So I work very slowly, and I go wrap for wrap for wrap, making sure that thread is flat all the way back. Just tying that thing in probably takes me, I don't know, 20 minutes. I take my time. I take it slowly. I'm not trying to rush it. Why? There's something called the domino effect in classic tying. Whatever you do sets you up for the next thing you're going to do. So if you do something badly, it's going to have a knock-on effect. Now, smooth silk bodies and smooth tinsel bodies all start with smooth underbodies. So you get that wrong, your body will never be smooth because you didn't lay down the foundation properly, smoothly, and efficiently. So that's like highly, highly, highly important. Okay.
Gordon?
Yeah.
Right there at the point where you started, where the hook eye should be, is that tied in on the side, or are they tied together and then tapered out towards the back?
Okay, so they tied in.
Is it on the side of the shank, or is it underneath the shank?
It's underneath the shank. So you've got these two strands. Ian, how you doing, man?
Fine, thanks. I got it.
Lekker, my man.
Rian?
How's it, Ian?
How's it, Ian?
Yeah, all right, man.
Lekker,
And how's it, Dean?
man. Is Dean daar? Lekker.
Yeah, Dean's there.
Okay, so okay, let's carry on. We'll chat just now, guys. Okay, so basically they tied on under the shank, okay, and then look at the tape I've got going out. The reason I like doing this is because in terms of transitions, everything is totally smooth, you know. So yeah, so I like doing that. Then the next thing, and this is something that Jeff Dickey taught me. When it comes to tags, a lot of people think it's just a tag. So they just tie it in and they just go through the motions. But you know what? If you take your time and you perfect every little step of that fly, you'll end up with a fly that you really, really like. Now, this is a little tinsel tag I've tied in here. But what I've done differently is I've actually burnished this tag. I've taken like a very smooth stone and I've rubbed it on here. And what that does is it smooths this out. Oval tinsel is basically flat tinsel wound around a core. And when you wrap it, some of those some of that flat tinsel around the core sort of stands out. So you get these little gaps happening. But remember, it's tinsel, so it can bend, it's metal. So if you take a burnishing tool and you just burnish it, you get this super, super, super smooth effect. Now, it's just a tag, but let me tell you what, when you look at that tag, you go, holy shit, that's a nice tag, you know? And you can look at a fly and it can be a nice fly, but then you look and you go, the tag's a bit dodgy. So don't try and rush it ever. Take your time. Okay, so here's a silk tag I tied. Okay, so here was the tinsel, and there was sort of the silk I tied, the tip, and then the silk over there. Notice it's not too long. Redensich will make you tie your tag from there. And then you end up with a thing, Dave Kahn calls them donkey dongs. It looks like the tolly of a donkey, you know, this long ass tag. No, but it does, you know, have you ever seen a donkey pee? That's what it looks like, you know. So the problem there is it affects the entire balance of the fly negatively. If you have any questions about classic salmon flies, go look at what vintage flies look like. Go look at what the guys who actually fish these things did with them, you know, and that'll give you a very good idea. If you look at the plates and you look at the actual flies, if you go to like Feathers and Phantoms, that's a website, you can go look at actual vintage flies. If you buy the Farlow's book or the Hardy book, you know, you can actually look at vintage flies and look at what they look like. Their tags were compact, okay? So yeah, make your tags compact, make them neat. For tags, you don't need major thick silk. Often I split the silk, so I'm working with a thinner silk. Notice all the way, flat thread, flat thread, flat thread, okay? Very important. Notice where I've ended, just above the hook point, okay? Now, the tail of the fly. The tail is like one of the most important elements because it sets you up for the entire thing. If you look at this picture here, this tail for me personally is too high, okay? It's way too high. There are a couple of things that sort of happens when you tie in a high tail like this. Number one, it forces your wing to have this sort of a shape. Look at that straight line over there. Straight lines look shit on women and they look shit on flies. Curves are beautiful. I'm telling you, curves are a beautiful thing. Now, I'm sorry, I'm not being chauvinist here, but curves, ladies, curves, if you have curves, keep them. Don't try and get rid of them. They are beautiful, okay? So that tail sets the whole thing up. If the tail is too long, look at what happens to this fly. Way too much weight at the back here. Poof. Too much. So it's back heavy. The balance is off. You can see this thing's got this heavy ass. It's like the feather version of a Buick. It just drags. But now let's look at this little guy. Tail extends out, goes up, and that's got better balance. And there's not only one way to do a fly. I mean, I could have made this tail a bit longer, made the wing a bit shorter. You can play with balance, you know, it's a variable thing. But balance is exactly that, balance. It's about balancing a fly out. So if this tail was super long, I'd make the wing a little bit shorter. So the wing balances out the long tail. You play with it. You can actually, when you look at vintage flies, you see lots of examples of that sort of thing, okay? So balance is an important thing, and it's something that takes you a while to understand. You don't just look at a fly and understand the balance from day one. It takes you a couple of flies to start understanding what it's all about. Balance is not just about how various parts of the flies complement each other. Balance is also to do with what elements on the fly do and how they attract your eye to them. For instance, if I had a like a major, say now I used 5 toppings and I made this major topping, my eye would be drawn to the topping. For me personally, what I like in a fly is I like every single element you need to see each element as an individual element. But when you look at the fly as a whole, your eye shouldn't be attracted to a certain element. The whole should be pleasing, you know. And then after you've looked at the whole and it works, then your eye goes in and you start pinpointing and picking things out and look at them, you know, carefully. But this thing should be like a symphony. It should work. Everything works together. It's part of a puzzle. No element is more important than another element. They all work to make, like for instance, you're building 1,500 piece puzzle and you miss one piece. Your picture's never complete because you're missing the piece. So each little piece in this thing is super important. Okay, let's look at this fly. So this is a fly I grabbed off the internet. Like if this is someone's fly, I really apologize. The tying of this fly is not bad. It's not a badly tied fly. But if you look at this fly, look at this tail, okay? And look at how heavy this fly is in the back. And what the tail also does is, look at the wing. It gives you that straight look, okay? Lots of good work on this fly. Nice silk work, nice ribbing, nice throat happening there. There's a lot of good stuff happening. But for me personally, I don't necessarily like the balance of this fly. If you do this, for instance, all of a sudden, that works a bit better for me. So I've just shortened the tail, lowered it a bit. Look, and your wing starts to develop a bit of curve. Can you see the curve there? Look at the angle of the throat and the angle of the wing. That just works a lot better for me. And the difference there started with one thing, the tail. The tail set this guy up. So that's important. Tails are like highly important. And I'll go through a lot of necks just to find decent tails. You actually, when you buy golden pheasant necks or heads, you need a couple because you need options. And you won't, I like using let's see, yeah, I like using these little feathers, okay? And you won't find many of them on a head. You'll find a lot of them, but you won't find many good ones. You might find, I don't know, 5 or 6 really good ones. And what I typically do is I give them what I call the fingernail treatment. I'll put my fingernail on the bottom and I will basically rub them against the fingernail, going against the grain of the rachis or the stem of the feather. And what that'll do is it'll splay those little fibers out, okay? And what I'll typically do is I'll tie the feather in on the tip, on the white stuff, on the softer stuff, okay? And that to me is a beautiful, beautiful tail. Very often I'll spend time just stripping heads and looking for tails, and I'll put the really good ones together, you know, in a little thing. So I'll have a whole jar full of decent tails that I can use. The main thing with the tail and with toppings as well is that they must be perfectly straight. Now, sometimes when you take them off the neck, they aren't perfectly straight because they've been in a packet and they've twisted a bit or whatever. You can treat them. You can put them in warm water, let them lie there for a while, shake the water off, and then put them on a pane of glass and let them dry. And then they will dry straight. But that only works if the feathers were straight to start off with, okay? If they were actually twisted on the bird, no. So that's quite important. Working with straight tails and straight, we've got lightning out too. Straight crests are highly, 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 highly important. Okay, so yeah, this is that Nicholson. Look at how the tail extends. It's an extension of the shank and it just comes up just beautifully. The shank and it extends. The angle is not fighting this line. if this tail was tied like this, it would be fighting that line. It's funny, in Hale's book, all his drawings have these high tails. I know for a fact, like when they tied them, they probably didn't look like that, because that's the problem with a lot of text, is it's an artist's impression versus the real thing, you know? I mean, so you've always got to ask yourself, how did these things actually look like? So yeah, notice slap bang straight on top of the hook shank. And what I like to do is, I don't like to cut that rachis off. I keep that in there, because what a lot of guys do is when they tie these tails on, they tie them on too softly. Tie this thing as if you're going to fish it. So it's got to be solid. If someone came along and pulled on this tail after you've tied the fly, it shouldn't come out. It should be fuss. You know, someone once did that to one of my flies that I tied right in the beginning, and the tail came out, and it came out, and I was so pissed off. And then I thought to myself afterwards, no, you shouldn't be pissed off. You tied it badly. You must tie that thing on there so that you can swim this thing, that it's going to last. It mustn't just come out. That's terrible. So from that day onward, I started tying my tails in properly. Okay, so that's the tail tied in properly. Very nice. I've gone for a flatter feather here. And this will give me a more open look, okay? Here I've got a tail veiling. I've tied that on. This is a woodduck, barred woodduck. And what I've done is, you'll notice here, I haven't cut this off, okay? I've placed this on either side of the feather stem, and that's quite important. And I tie it slap bang on top. I don't cut this off. And I'll tell you why I don't cut it off. Because when I tie in my ostrich herl for the butt of the fly, okay, different fly, this is a different fly, it's not the same fly. I'm just illustrating the point. Notice that over there adds as a stopper for that herl. So that herl butt can't slip or slide anywhere. Why? Because that thing there, that stops it from doing it. So you get a nice compact thing, and those butts act as a sort of a stopper. Now, in this case, you'll notice I haven't fully gutted this fly. And there's a reason for that, because this fly is going to be dubbed. And I wanted to save my vintage gut. When you're dubbing a fly, steps like that or bad transitions like that don't matter, because you can just make up with it in the dubbing. But if you have to work with silk over that sort of thing, or tinsel, it's always a major, major issue. Okay, and then what I've done is I've wrapped all the butts in, and they're in there, fuss, 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 so nothing's coming out. And then I've taken another color thread, and I wrap my rib in. From that point there, all the way, I wrap the ribbon. Notice over here, I'm not cared how I wrap the ribbon. This section here is going to be silk. So yeah, my thread control is impeccable. I go very slowly, very carefully, because I know if I'm laying silk down on something, the underbody, whatever's under that silk, needs to be perfectly, perfectly smooth. You can also burnish it, okay, with that smooth stone of yours, rub it, and that will flatten out the odd fiber that sort of jumped up. But guys, burnishing cannot save you. If your underbody is bad, no amount of burnishing is going to make it better. It'll smooth it out slightly, but it's still going to be bad. Okay, and yeah, I've tied on my silk section. So check, it's nice, it's smooth, it's beautiful. The thing with silk is take your time. Take your time, use silk gloves, don't rush. Yeah. The reason I tied that ribbon all in one go like that is why? Transition. I don't want any bumps over here, anything. Now, a lot of guys will just strip a little bit off and they'll just tie it in there. I don't like doing that. This is a trick I learned from Jeff Dickey, where he ties the whole thing in. It just gives you a smoother looking fly. Okay, over here I've tied in the hackle, which I have folded. This is on top of the fly. Queenie. Sorry, my dog's freaking out. There's light. I just want to fetch the dog. Okay. Rest. Okay, I've got the dog. Okay. Rest. Can you see the dog? Okay, there's the dog. Wait, let me show you the dog quick. There's the dog. She's freaked out by the light. Okay, wag, kyk hierdie ouma. Hallo, sê hallo vir die ouma. Kom. Come. Rustig. Queenie. So my dog's never had lightning. She's shivering. She's shaking her ass.
Shame.
Okay, now I've got her. Okay, there we go. So there I've got the hackle in. I've dubbed that first section. Okay, with dubbing, guys, I don't like this whole concept of putting dubbing in split thread. That's a modern thing. It's really not cool. You know, I don't think dubbing should be too loose. You know, I don't think the fly is going to swim as effectively if that dubbing's way too loose. So I just dub the stuff on normally. If you need to use wax, do. And I mean, with like seal's fur, often you do need to use wax. A bit of blonde wax is cool. And over here, I've tied the whole thing. I've dubbed everything. I've then wrapped the ribbing on, and I've hackled it. Notice how the hackle is behind the rib. Why? There's a functional reason for that, so that the rib protects the hackle from being bitten off by a salmon's teeth. Okay? Now here's the kicker. When you wing a fly, good winging starts with the body and with the hackle. If there's a major step over here, it'll push your wing up. So you've got to taper this body down, okay? And notice how all the stuff on the top here I've taken off, I've peeled off to make sure that it doesn't push the wing up, okay? And then the next thing I've done is I've put on a throat. Now, the important thing with a throat is to select the right feather. And I like to strip the one side of the feather off. That's what I like. That's what I like to do for throat. So I'll typically strip the one side off, and I won't do many wraps, say 2 or 3 wraps, maybe 4, and I'll do that for the throat. A lot of guys take feathers that are like this. This one doesn't look as good as it actually is. It's got more curve to it actually. But very often guys take these feathers with stiff ass fibers and try and, like, you know, fix them with spit. And spit does help, but you need to start off with a feather that's sexy to start with. And that's quite important. Also notice I don't leave too much space for the wing and the head over there. You don't need too much space. Most guys, when they start, leave way too much space because they get nervous. But later on, you realize you literally need 2 millimeters. It is fine. The main thing is thread control is important. You've got to control everything happening in that area. And that's like super, super, super important. Once again, look at the taper. Taper in a fly is something that you've got to purposefully put there. The hackle I selected for the body is what I like to call a Christmas tree hackle. It's the shape of a Christmas tree. Thin as short fibers at the top of the feather, getting longer as you go down the feather. Okay, that's a nice golden pheasant head with tippets. Very important. Look how nice that looks. Daniel, this is the exact one I'm sending you. Okay.
Ooh, thank you.
Yeah, that's the exact one I'm sending you. Okay, so check here. This is not even 2 millimeters, that section there, okay? Tippets. The main thing with tippets is that they are totally straight. They have to match. So if one tippet has got a bit more curve than another tippet, or the angles that the fibers come off the stems are different, it'll exert undue pressure or excess pressure on the other one, and you'll have a skew wing. From the top, this is what you want. It needs to be totally, totally, totally straight. Pairing those feathers and getting it right is highly, highly, highly important. Why? Because that is going to affect your wing. If that thing is skew, your wing's going to be skew. So decent wings also depend on decent underwings. And the underwing has a structural component. Notice I don't strip anything off the top. I put spit on there. I sort of massage this down. This thing structurally is going to help my wing. It's going to support my wing. So that helps you a lot. You know, the wing doesn't just need to stand there on its own. It can actually rest on this. Okay, and here's the wing I ended up putting on that. This wasn't the best fly I've ever tied. It was a Baker. Many things I could have done differently, but this is the wing. And the important thing with wings is matching feathers. Now, these are my busted feathers I use in that. These are perfectly matching feathers. They came off the same bird, and they came off opposing wings, and yeah, they perfectly matched. The problem with a lot of guys is when they look at feathers, the feathers look good like this. It looks like a pair. But if you look at the feathers in cross section, the angles that those fibers come off the stems are not always the same. And that is a major problem, because what it does is one feather's angle will be dominant, and it will always push the other one a little bit too hard. They need to be balanced. They need to exert the same force on each other. So that's why matching pairs is important. This as well. This I literally plucked myself from a peacock. This is a perfect matching pair. Daniel, I'm sending you this. Not this one, but like a pair like this that I took myself. Okay, nice turkey. Nice matching pairs from Cook's Hill, dyed turkey. So that's important. Your wing components need to be good. Aim for a nice clean edge to the wing, not too tapered. I could have made this more square. It would have been nicer. Made it a bit more square. Measure the wing properly, okay? Most guys, when they start, are going to come up short. So knowing that, give yourself a couple of extra millimeters, make it slightly longer. Daniel, this is for you. Make it slightly longer than you think you need it, than you think it should be. And when you tie it in, it'll probably be perfect. Okay? Tying in the wing is the thing that beginners fear most. And the important thing is this. Always remember, it's just fly tying. You're not saving the world. Okay? It's going to take you time. You're going to have to feel the wing moving in between your fingers, and it'll take you a bit of time to get it right. But essentially what you want to be doing, and this is a good picture to describe that, is tying the wings on top of the hook shank. They shouldn't straddle the sides. They should be on top, and they should fold in like a concertina. They should perfectly collapse on each other. Okay? That's a good tying. Notice another thing. When I've tied this wing in, look at the line of the thread there. It's perfectly straight. Sometimes what happens is the wing slips forward, and the wing is tied over here with your throat at the back. No good. It needs to be a straight line like that. The wing mustn't slip or slide forward, and that's got to do with thread control and also how you control the fibers when you hold them. Okay? What I like to do is, and this is in Redentious' book as well, I like to pre-collapse these things slightly in between my fingers. I'll sort of try and compress the one side with my fingers, and then I'll hold the other side and I'll compress it and let go of this side, and vice versa. And I'll do that the whole time until I've compressed it to a certain extent, and then I'll put my thread on, 2 wraps, and then I'll hold it quite tightly, and then I'll pull up with a thread. Also, what I try and do is make sure that there's an angle to the swing, so the thread, so there's a groove that the thread can slide into. It's hard to just describe this like this. It's something that's going to take time. In the beginning, you'll fear this. Many things will happen to you when you tie on wings. They'll explode on you. They'll fold on you. They'll do all sorts of things, okay? And you will think you are shit. You'll think you can't tie. You'll think, why did I ever think of doing this? What am I doing to myself? You might even take up drinking or whatever you need to do. But let me tell you what, eventually one day, it falls into place and your fingers miraculously know what the hell to do. And then winging is not something you fear, because you know you're going to get it on the first and second time, or second time every time. So it's, you've just got to stick with it. Take your time. Take your time. Okay, so this is like a sort of a bolt wing I did on a Queen of Spring. Golden pheasant, yeah, tippets that I got in there in strands. I then got an underwing of golden pheasant, and then I got another wing over here, put that over. So it's built. It's sort of like tiles on a roof, layered on top of each other. And what I'll typically do is follow my arrow here. Look at the golden pheasant. At the end over there, I'll actually marry the golden pheasant to this top wing, just to keep everything together. You see that wing's tucked under there? But over here, I'll purposely allow it to marry onto that wing for me. It'll just help me. Okay, I've put in sides. When people start out tying, what they typically do is the sides and the cheeks are always too short. So just watch out for that. Look how far. These sides almost extend all the way to the butt of the fly. Check that out, okay? Quite important. Yeah, this is that same fly I showed you just now. Look, this throat's looking much sexier now. Look at that nice curve it's got going. Very important. Okay, roofs. Now, this is something my friend Ruan taught me. The thing with roofs is getting the right feathers. Now, very often you'll look at bronze mallard feathers and they will look like a matched pair. And they will look good when you look at the feathers. But the way you need to look at the feathers is like this, in cross section. And what you're looking for is at the angle that those fibers come off the stems match each other. If you get that right, you'll get decent roofs like that. That's a really good looking roof. Okay, so I'll tie the one slip on that side. I'll not tie it on. I'll just put it there with my finger. I'll then put the near side. And then the important thing is that over here, this section here, these slips need to meet. There mustn't be a gap between them. They need to meet. And typically when I tie them in, they'll be in the air like this. They won't look like they look now. They'll be slap bang up there somewhere. And I'll literally massage them onto this wing. You know, there's a lot of feather fondling that takes place with classic salmon flies. You're massaging that. I mean, you're stroking feathers like, oh my word, you just stroke feathers a lot. It's stroke, 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 stroke. So stroke those feathers. I'll typically put a little bit of spit on the top wing and I'll stroke those little guys on there. Okay, so that's your, look how nice that roof looks. Perfect roof. Important, it must touch over there. And you can really massage these things onto the wing, you know. They're little barbules on these feathers that will stick to your wing. You know, use that. Don't use cheap ass tricks. Don't try and put wax there and try and stick it on. It's bullshit. Good old fashioned, decent tying is what you need to be doing, okay? And then there's the roof. Notice the length of the roof, okay? Typically when people start out, they make their roofs too short. No, look at how long that roof is. In a lot of the vintage flies, your roof will extend on the whole wing, you know? Obviously, when you're tying bigger, that's difficult. But a lot of these flies were smaller. They weren't as massive as as a lot of the modern classics are. So look at the sides, look how long they are, okay? Look at that jungle cock, extends all the way to the butt almost, okay? The mallard, the gray mallard, look how far that goes. Look how far the bronze mallard goes, okay? So you're checking that out. Okay. Toppings. People, the main thing with a topping is this. A topping can make or break a fly. Take your time. With this particular fly, I had 4 toppings on it before I was happy. Now, typically what I like to do is you need a topping that is sized for the fly you're tying. Like, preferably, I would have liked to tie this topping in that area there where it's softer. It's sort of hollow there and it's a softer area. I couldn't find one that worked properly, so I had to adapt it slightly. But you don't want to be tying massive toppings and tying them over here. Problems, problems, problems. No, get a topping that fits the actual fly. And when you put a topping on, okay, obviously I've bent this slightly. I've taken a tweeze and bent this slightly to let that fit on. It's got to lie slap bang straight on this section over here. And then it'll just flow off on its own, naturally beautiful. Take your time getting that topping on. A topping can make or break a fly. Don't just put any topping on there and hope for the best. Also, if you get to places in the fly where you hit a brick wall, walk away. Go take a piss, have a coffee, maybe go play golf for a day. You know, go walk the dog. Don't try and tie this thing in one go. That is suicide. Okay. Give yourself a couple of sessions because it's like highly intense work. This, you know, I would think it would be like close to heart surgery. You know, luckily you're not going to kill anyone if you make a mistake here, but I think it's the same kind of intensity, or can be at least. Maybe I'm just over exaggerating this, but for me, it feels that intense. When I've tied one of these things, it feels like my brain's overheating, okay? And that's the final fly. This was like a Mar Lodge I tied. Okay, any questions up till this point? Are you guys still with me?
Yep.
Is everyone still there?
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, I'm here.
Any questions?
Still, yeah.
No questions. Okay. No stress. Back into it. So let's take a look at this fly. This is a fly by Jeff Dickey. And I just want to show you the sort of the brilliance behind what this guy does. Look at the tip and the tag. Perfect. Okay. Look at how that tail just extends out of the shank. Look at how perfectly balanced this thing is. Look at the wing. Okay. Follow the line, follow the line, follow the line. See how it complements. But there's extra things he does. Look at how he uses the Amherst and the busted in the wing to complement what he's doing in the throat. So what happens is, visually, this here is connected with this here. It's like they fit because he's worked with the texture in the wing to complement the texture in the throat. Look at how perfectly, so how perfectly that topping, and Jeff Dickey does some of the best toppings I've ever seen, how perfectly that topping fits on that wing. Look how it's hugging the wing. It's like it's best friends with this wing. It just hugs it. Poof, 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 poof. And it fits perfectly. Now, he told me, he said, Gordon, the main thing is you don't need a topping that looks exquisite on its own necessarily. You just need a topping that's super straight, okay, and that fits the fly, and that's going to hug it like that. You get those things, it's going to work. He says, none of my toppings on their own are totally, perfectly beautiful, but they work on the fly, and that's the important thing, okay? So this is kind of where I think one should aim for. I mean, this is just a technically extremely, really, really good looking fly, you know? Some of the purists might go, yeah, but it's too artistic or whatever the case is. But the thing is, from a tying perspective, this is a solid fly. You could swim this thing. It'll swim. You know, if I had to like pull on this tail, it's not coming out. He's tied it solidly. He's tied it well. So yeah. Okay, here's a vintage fly. Now, remember I was telling you, you could play around with things. So typically, this is not what I would necessarily do with this long tail. But I actually like this long, low look. You know, it's got character. There's something about it. Yeah, I quite like this fly. Same, also a jock Scott, but now a different approach. Not as long, not as low. So, you know, ties have different styles. People prefer different things. It's like every single guy, like I've got this friend who likes a fuller figured woman. He likes a bigger girlfriend, and that is great. You know, I've got another friend who likes a thinner girlfriend. None of them is wrong. They have different tastes, and fly ties are exactly the same. So there we go, long and lean, a little bit thicker, all good. Okay. Any questions?
I'm good.
Is everyone good?
Yeah, I'm good.
Okay, so the main thing is this. You cannot work with shit, number one. You cannot. You work with shit, it's not going to work. Number two, plan what you're doing. Number three, as Davey McPhail would say, take your time. Take your time. Doesn't matter. With just tying in in the gut eye. Take your time. Don't rush. A lot of guys rush and they just want to finish the fly. This for me is not about finishing flies. This for me is about enjoying the process. This is like meditation. Take it slowly, every step of the way. Don't rush. Don't rush. Take your time. You're not tying these things. You remember, you're not tying a pheasant tail nymph where you're just whipping it up quickly and you want to go nail a trout. You're not doing that. Okay. This is something else that you must know. Okay. This is something else. So enjoy the process and don't try and be an expert in one day. You know, this stuff takes years to start understanding and doing it nicely. But when the stuff falls into place, like one day you tie a fly and you go, shit, did I tie that? You know, when you start, you look at flies on the internet and you go, oh, that's so nice. And 10 years later, you look at that same fly, you go, oh, it's terrible. It's horrid. That guy's throat's too short. The whole thing's out of balance, you know? And 10 years ago, you were looking at that same fly going, wow, this is amazing. So you're changing, you're evolving. You'll also find that this stuff will have a knock-on effect on your normal tying. It'll affect the way you tie a pheasant tail nymph. You'll think differently. It's a bit like, what's the difference between tying classics and normal flies? It's like taking an advanced driver's course as opposed to a normal K53 license, you know? It's like once you've done that advanced driver's course, there's no turning back. Your mind's been open to new things and you will use it in the everyday stuff that you do. So yeah. So Anna, anything you would like to add? Did I miss anything?
No, all good, eh? No, everything was spot on.
Okay, so that's basically it. Oh, and the other thing, read. Books I would recommend reading. Okay, Hales, How to Tie Salmon Flies. In terms of the actual tying of the flies, that's a really good book. You can download it. You can find it on the internet, free. You download it onto your phone. I've got it on my phone. Someone sent me a real copy of it the other day. So I've actually got a little Hales How to Tie Salmon Flies. And that's a really good resource, you know. And then the other thing, go look at, yeah.
I'll actually send you guys a link now that has got about 8 or 9 different classic books in there. You just click on the link and you can download it. So it was on a page that I found, and there's all the different. It's got black, it's got hail, it's got
Okay,
calcium,
Arno,
it's got
put it
tannins, all of that.
so send them the link on the group, but put it in the chat too. So that
Okay.
people who I'm recording this thing for can actually look at that and go find it. Will you put it in the chat for me?
Sure.
There's
Thanks,
a little
Arno.
speech bubble. Okay, sir. So yeah, reading's important. Okay, materials. Where do you go and buy decent materials? Okay, because this is the important thing. Now, some of the best materials I've gotten from friends and in trades, and trading a guy for, you know, I have an extra set of busted feathers and I'll trade him for some vintage gut or whatever the case might be. I mean, trading is like a very important thing. So, and nowadays making contact with other tyers is easy because we've got Facebook, we've got all sorts of things. So trading, number one. Number two, a very good source for me if you're going to buy stuff is Steve Cooper from Cook's Hill. And I'll tell you why. Steve pairs his feathers quite well, okay? The quality is really good, okay? And he pairs them up nicely. Feathers MC, also very good. eBay, also very good, although some people are, the problem with buying over the interwebs is you don't always know what you're getting, okay? That's why for me, I like swapping with guys. I like trading because I know my friend isn't going to send me shit because he knows if he sends me shit, I'm not going to send him stuff ever again. So, you know, we help each other. It's a small world, this, you know, and we just help each other. That's why you'll notice, Daniel. So you started, and on your first day, Arno just gave you a care package. He gave you a couple of things. He didn't give you everything you need, but he gave you a couple of things. He said, okay, this will just get you going, you know, boof, 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 boof. The first fly I tied, someone gave me a care package. I walked in, Murray Pedder, to his place, and I said, I want to tie Jock Scott. And he gave me some feathers to tie a Jock Scott. He said, I don't really recommend that you tie this thing, but go for it, you know, and these aren't the greatest feathers, but this will get you going. So that's the important thing, is we got to help each other, you know, trade. If you've got excess, like guinea fowl, if you've got excess guinea fowl, or Dean, I know you're lying on lots of silks at the moment, you know, you can trade that stuff. Or did you get all that turkey as well?
Yes, all the dyed turkey.
Yeah. So Dean's got dyed turkey, he can trade as well. I've got, what did I have here? I've got this guy, this very cool guy, gave me, man, that stuff you rub on the thread. I'm getting old. Wax, yes.
Wax.
Black cobbler's wax and blonde. Okay. So if anyone needs, like Daniel, I'm sending you that stuff. If anyone needs, 100%. Arno, you can make.
That's probably some of the best wax that I've used. Eh? You sent me a block. Probably one of the best waxes I've used. Yeah.
That was
fact,
what.
It's still soft.
You send us the black one
Yeah.
and the cream one, and I'm still working off the cream one, and I'm not even close to halfway.
Okay, so that was I can't even remember the name, man. I sent him a care package. Huh?
Pierre, I think. Pierre sent something like it.
No, it wasn't him. It was yesterday. I feel so bad that I can't remember this guy's name. He ties wet flies. And I see nowadays he's tying a lot of classics. And he was trying to start out, and he really, stuff was a bit, his materials are a bit shitty. So I said to him, you know what, dude, let me just send you a couple of things. Just play with that. Just start there. You need hooks. And I just sent him some stuff. And then this oak sent me like 70 blocks of wax. So I've got all this wax. It's lying out, you know, and
Well, I wouldn't mind buying some from you.
No,
I'll buy some from you, Gordy.
You can have it, bro.
I also like some.
No, lekker.
Yeah, that's good wax.
Okay, so wax we've got, Axe. Woo-hoo-hoo. Okay, lekker.
Did you guys get that link, by the way?
Let's have a look.
Yeah, I've got it.
Okay, so everyone's got that link. I actually want to just take a photo of this link. Okay. Have you got the Hardy book, Arno?
Yeah. No, I don't have the Hardy one. No, I've
Shit,
got
I need
Farlow's,
to-
but not the Hardy.
Apparently, the Hardy book's quite something.
Yeah, that's my next buy.
Apparently, it's cool.
Yeah.
I know the
I
oak.
definitely want to get that.
I know the oak who published it, Paul Morgan. He distributes my book in the UK.
Can
Cocky
he get us a
Bondu.
discount? Can he get us a discount?
I can possibly get it. I just got to ask him. No, he's cool. I'm mates with him. He's a cool oak. Cocky Bondu is the publisher of the Hardy's book and the Farlow's book and various others. So yeah.
Yeah, I definitely, that's my next book I want to get.
But dude, as you know, those books weigh like 75 kilograms each. So postage is always an issue.
More
do.
postage than you do for the book.
On that
Yeah.
topic, do you guys have any good advice if you're buying from Feathers MC, or how do we get the stuff here quicker? Because that's always a freaking ball ache.
There is a way
Waiting
to do
months.
it. There is one way to do it. You can get materials to yourself in a week, but it costs. If you do it via FedEx, I know this because I do this. When I send books abroad, right? Because I'm doing quantity, the price is not too bad. So I like send off like 200 books at a time. So when you're doing like mass postage, it's cheaper. So I'll send my books off and they'll be there in a week. If you have to rely on normal post, it's going to take them 3 months to get the book. But my shipping agent is so good. They charge me about the same price as the post office. The only difference is the post office takes 3 to 6 months and they take a week. So guess who I'm going, I ended up going with.
Yeah.
And so FedEx is the way. But you have to throw money at it. That's the problem. What I would suggest is that people buy in groups, and then the postage basically gets cut,
Yeah.
So that's kind of the way I would suggest one does it. But also, I mean, a lot of guys are hoarders. They've got way too much material. Figure out what you want to tie and get the materials for that. And also get materials, that are versatile. And don't be scared to substitute. I mean, getting decent golden pheasant tail tails is a mission. So if you can't get them, use Amherst and dye it cinnamon. Amherst marries easier. You've got longer fibers. Generally, you've got nice long fibers. It doesn't look bad. It looks okay. And it's just easier to get. If you can get nice gold feathers, golden pheasant mixed with Amherst, and even in Victorian times, they were breeding those things. Excellent, but you can't always get them. So use what you can get and get quality, Make sure, don't work with shit. I used to always think, let me save my feathers. And even when I got to a point where I could tie, I was saving feathers. Then I thought to myself, you know what, bullshit. Don't save the feathers. You've got the basics under wraps. Use the feathers. Because what if a bus hits you tomorrow? Then you've got these nice Katinga feathers here, sitting here that you never ever used, lying there. And your wife's going to throw them out because you told her you paid R2 a feather, where you paid $20 a feather, whatever the case might be, $10 a feather. So enjoy it. And also don't try and tie 100 flies. Rather take a week to tie one fly and tie one really good fly. Smash it out the park. Take your time. If a throat doesn't work, take it off. Put another feather on. See what that does. If a wing doesn't work, analyze it. Ask yourself, why is it not winging? What did I do wrong? I tied the throat off on top of the hook shank and there's a bump. So that bump throws the wing off the whole time. Oh shit. Okay. I need to go back. I need to cut the throat off. I need to do that again. Tie it in on the bottom of the shank, you know, or, oh my goodness, I didn't taper the dubbing for the body off. So now it's pushing my wing up. There's always a reason why something's happening. There's no magic with this stuff. It's perfectly scientific, you know. It's like there are reasons why things happen when you tie. Why are wings folding on you? There's always a logical explanation. And when you start understanding the mechanics and why things work the way they work, then the actual tying's easy. Like, I'm not going to joke. It's not hard to tie these things. I'm not saying it's easy, super easy, but it's not impossible. If it was impossible, no one would do it. It is challenging, but not impossible. So yeah, for me, it's about making flies my own. You know, like I'll give an example. So one of the favorite flies I ever tied was, let me just find this blooming thing. Anna knows exactly where I'm going. One of my favorite flies I ever tied was a Mar Lodge, this fly. I'd never ever seen a Mar Lodge I liked, and I didn't particularly like the pattern. And the problem with it is that it doesn't really have any body hackle. So most people, when they tie Mar Lodges, their throats are too short, the wings too heavy. So I couldn't find guinea fowl that had long enough fibers. So what did I do? I basically took a tail feather from a guinea fowl and I stripped it like one would do with jay. And I tied it in like that. So I got a nice long throat, and that throat balanced the wing out, you know, very well. And like, I mean, it's not a perfect fly, but in terms of Mar Lodges, I'm not going to joke, it's probably the Mar Lodge I've seen that I actually liked the most, and I tied it myself. So why? Because it balances well. It just sits, you know, you look at it and you go, yes. And you will tie those flies, you know, you will tie flies that you go, yes, they'll make you feel good. You know, old oaks always tell me, oh, I don't know what to do with myself. I'm in retirement. I'm like, holy shit, bro. If I had time, I know exactly what I'll do. I'll sit behind the vise every day. I couldn't think of anything nicer. Take my dog for a walk, work a bit on the veiling of that jock scot there, irritate my wife a bit, then I'm back on the flies. You know, like lekker. So yeah, does anyone have any comments?
Well, I think for the guys that tie less, patience is, and like you said before, you can't rush these things, and you got to have the courage to go back and fix things.
I love that. You got to go back and fix things. Yes, and you know how many
I
times?
dreaded that.
You know how many times I've stripped down flies that I've worked like 4 hours on? Oh, I just need to get the dog.
Dean, are you a chef by any chance?
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. Nice. Where?
Well, I currently work for actually a big property developer. So I basically cook for the execs, and I've got
Big man.
I've got quite a difficult boss. So he's got very specific needs. He's the type of guy that takes the same attention that we do to a salmon fly, he would assess a steak. No jokes. He's a closet case cattle farmer as well. That's one of his hobbies. He's got 2 big farms, one in Dundee. So he raises cattle to a certain level, and then they get butchered, and then I have to cook that meat to perfection.
Yes. Are you executive chef, Dean?
Yes. I
man.
actually specialize in pastry and
Nice.
baking, but this is post-COVID opportunity.
Yeah.
I was actually on my way to Europe to go work on the mega yachts, but yeah, ended up
Drew, you
swinging
and my
spanners.
wife, You and my wife will get along like this because she's a level 3 chef. So,
Oh, wonderful.
yeah,
Not an easy industry to be in.
no,
Yeah, definitely not now.
Yeah, especially now. I remember
Yeah.
about 10, 15 years back, I was a chef myself. But yeah, the industry is, at that time, the industry was still lekker. But like you say now, I'm glad I'm not in your shoes.
Look, I've been quite fortunate with where I'm now. I've been working for this company for about 2 months, and it's an office job. So Monday to Fridays, and the luxury of basically knowing your customer. It's quite easy, but very health focused. Nutrition is something that is quite focused on, and I've got dietaries coming out of my arse on a daily basis. So I've got people that are intolerant to gluten. I've got garlic allergies. So you have to be quite creative.
Yeah. But weren't you in the car industry or something like that?
Yes, so I'm actually sitting in the workshop. My brother does muscle cars. I grew up with
That's
it.
what I remember. I remember
And-
the Hemi
and-
motor that you posted.
Yeah, there's actually, I wish I could, I'll send some pictures on the group. There's always a bunch of cars. There's a lot of rich customers that spend big bucks here. My brother does quite well, and he's got quite a brand that he's established within the muscle car industry. So all the old hot rods and stuff, he's big on the engineering and the specialized motors. We grew up with it. I just decided that I didn't want to be a grease monkey, so I do it after hours.
Oh, okay.
Okay,
But yeah. Yes.
boys, thanks for the session. I'm going to have to love and leave you, Oaks. So
Okay.
yeah, thank you very much. That was cool.
Yeah,
Okay,
thanks,
thanks,
Woody.
Gordon.
If
Always
anyone,
enjoy it.
if anyone's got questions, email me, get in contact.
Okay. I've
Yes.
got one.
I think we
question.
should do
Yeah,
this on a regular basis, like sit and chat, entire fly, and drink a glass of wine. It'll be lekker.
Yeah, yeah. Danny, what do you want to ask?
Definitely.
Just go up to that.
So when you want a tire fly, where do you
Yes.
actually find like the recipe, how much
Okay.
fibers you put on top of each other and all that?
Okay, you don't.
Yeah.
Because it's open to your interpretation very often.
Okay.
They're not going to always specify. Sometimes they will, but they don't always. They won't specify 2 fibers, there's 3 fibers. They'll just tell you what's in it. They'll say golden
Yeah.
pheasant. They'll say that. They'll say that. So yeah, that's why
it
flies
can-
look different.
Yeah, it can be quite cryptic. I've also glazed over some of those, but yeah, I agree with what Gordon says. It is quite what you make of it.
There is a very useful book that I use quite a bit, and that is Radonjić's that 1,000 salmon flies or something like that. A lot of the times
I've
in there,
also got
like
it.
you say, they've got the material list in there, but it doesn't tell you how many fibers to use.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
it's not often that that I don't find a fly in there.
Yeah.
Okay.
I think
Sorry,
that the group is also quite a useful resource. I think between Arno, Gordon, and Ruan, they could give quite a lot of guidance in terms of interpreting, and they've tied quite a few of them.
Yeah, so just asked it, but yeah, dude, like I thought the same thing when I was younger. Like, no, it's very often it's up to your own interpretation of how things. I mean, obviously, if you read Kelson, just read the books. You'll see that a lot of guys have different opinions. Like a Kelson mixed wing is a very different thing to like a blacker mixed wing. They're 2 different things. Yet they both call them mixed wings. That's why people get confused, because even though the classic tires of old had different terminology or had the same terminology for different things. So you've actually got to read and understand what they're saying when they refer to certain things. But that takes time. Just readers are leaders, Bru. You've got to read. You've got to put in the time.
And also, the more you tie, the more you get to know what the feather looks like in a wing. So when you look at a vintage fly, you can look in, you can actually see inside the wing and go, hey, wait, there's an amherst feather. There's a GP feather. There's a turkey, or it's
Yeah.
not a turkey. It's maybe a koi or whatever. So you'll get to learn what the feathers look like within the wing, and then
Yeah.
you can start determining what the wing is constructed of. If you don't get the material list, or if you don't even know the name of the fly.
Yeah.
So yeah, that'll come with time. That was also my big issue in the beginning. It's like, wow, how does it work? What is in this wing? But the more you tie, the more you look at a fly, the more you study the old plates and learn what the feather looks like, you'll get to know what's in there.
Okay, boys, I've got to bounce. We'll chat.
Thanks,
Thanks,
Gordy.
Jared.
Lekker session.
Thank you,
Cool,
Gordon.
boys.
But
Thank you,
Thank you
gentlemen.
all.
guys.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, boykies.
Cheers. We'll
guys.
chat again. Cheers, guys.
Cheers, mate. Cheers,
Cheers.
mate.